Human beings all want to have confidence. We seek it and we wish we could have more. We admire it in those people that seem to have it. The energy and the passion that we may have for something is frequently correlated with the confidence we have in our ability to actually achieve that thing. We tend to strive for something only when we really believe that it is possible. In this video, we are covering confidence voting in PI planning, why it matters, how to do it, and what you should take into consideration when you are doing confidence voting in PI planning. Hey friends, I'm Ahmed, a scaled Agile transformation and productivity specialist based in the UK. On this channel, we learn how to scale Agile in your organization, but also how to be more productive, organized and stress-free at work. So if that sounds interesting, please consider subscribing to this channel. Human beings, regardless of how much we may protest, we always seek success. So whenever there's an endeavor where there's a good probability of success, we're going to put in that extra effort. Now, it's that extra effort, determination and focus and passion that frequently is the difference between success and failure. Whilst human beings thought that we couldn't run the 4-minute mile, it remained an impossible dream. But once Roger Bannister showed that it was possible, within a year, a large number of people had broken the 4-minute mile. Confidence in our ability to do something is key. And so whilst we will seek to have confidence in ourselves, we also want to have confidence in our mission and in our plan, its viability and the likelihood in success. But what is confidence? So let's have a look at the Cambridge Dictionary definition. The quality of being certain of your abilities or of having trust in people, plans, or the future. That's the Cambridge Dictionary definition, which sounds pretty appropriate for what we are trying to do in PI planning. And so confidence, in addition to helping improve the chances of success, it gives us a very visceral feeling when we encounter somebody with a huge amount of confidence. It impacts and changes our team behavior and dynamics. So now let's talk about how we measure our confidence levels for PI planning. The PI planning event gives us our roadmap and our goals for the next 8 to 12 weeks for our Agile release train. So the question you may have is, what is a confidence vote? The confidence vote is basically a vote of confidence, funnily enough, from everybody on the Agile release train that has participated in planning. And the confidence is on how effective and how realistic that plan actually is, and indeed whether there are any gaps over there that need remediation. Now, the typical voting scale that we use in Safe and Scaled Agile is a 1 to 5 scale approach. So 1 is no confidence whatsoever in the plan that has been put together. Now that would typically trigger a replan. 2 is you've got some very serious reservations with the planning that has taken place. 3 is, well, okay, kind of somewhere in the middle. You've got some good elements to it and you've got some bad elements, but I think they need some work that we need to do. 4 is we've done a pretty good job. We've got a few details over there that may need ironing out, but by and large, we're fairly comfortable with the plan. And 5 is, look, is as far as we have as much confidence as we possibly can have of any plan of the future. Of course, there's always going to be unknowns. Of course, there are going to be things that we can't cater for, but it is as confident as anyone can get. We've got a very plausible plan. People have put a lot of effort into it, and we've thought of and we've covered all of the key risks and issues that could pop up that we can think of at this moment in time, at this point in time. So that's a typical scale between 1 to 5. So what should you be focusing on when you're doing your confidence vote? The first thing I'd say is that focus on your area, focus on your function, focus on your role. What is it that you are responsible for or your team is responsible for, right? And so the confidence vote you will be giving is the confidence that you have in that specific area, topic, or team, right? So for example, if I'm a developer, then I would be giving a vote on the plan for my team. If I, for example, a release train engineer, then I would be giving a vote on how effective I thought the plan was at the release train level. If I was a system architect, I would be giving a vote of confidence on the architecture and how effective that was, looking from a planning point of view as well. How well had that been taken into consideration, as an example. Okay, so I'd focus on that. Now, if for example you're a developer on one team and you have a concern with the plan of another team, maybe some things come to light that you think would impact another team, I wouldn't let that impact your vote, right? You'd go to the other team, you talk to them and you say, hey guys, gals, there's this issue over here with the planning. It's come up, whether it's a technology or resourcing or whatever it is. This is likely to impact your plan. Please take that into consideration. Okay. Now it's up for them to decide how that impacts their planning confidence levels. Okay. For you, if you've got a great plan, then you shouldn't be taking their concerns into your vote. Okay. In this way, what happens then is as we go through the confidence vote, we can start to identify the areas where there are risks and the areas where there's no risk. And so that we can then start to plug the gaps within the risky areas. Okay. The second point I'd say is you're not looking for a risk-free plan, because there is no such thing, right? So sometimes people think that you can only give a 5 when you have 100%, you're 100% sure. Well, you'll probably never be 100% sure on a plan for the future, because anything could happen. But what you are looking for, you're saying, look, everything based on our current knowledge today in this event, based upon what we understand, we've covered off all of the risks, we understand all of the impediments that are there, we've got resolutions for those, and we've got mitigations in place for any risks that may arise, as well, that we have identified that may arise. And so we need to just bear in mind that there's no such thing as a risk-free plan, and that's not what we're looking for. But what we are looking for is areas of significant concern in the plan. The third thing that I would say is that when you're thinking of your confidence vote, don't think of it, because it's typically held at the end of the PI planning event, right? So what you want to do is you want to ask yourself that question from the beginning of your planning. So you want to ask yourself, how much confidence do I have in the current, say, for example, I'm working on the team planning that I'm doing at the moment, right? And if it's lacking, I would ask myself, well, what is missing? And then I would say, okay, if that's missing, I'll try and resolve that issue. And so you want to ask yourself that throughout the planning process. So when you come to the end, the chances of you having a 4 or a 5 are significantly higher than if you just consider it for the first time at the end of PI planning. So that's the thing that I would say. Okay, so let's move on to facilitation. Now, who would typically facilitate your confidence vote? So I typically expect your release train engineer or your coach or facilitator to be facilitating this. And the intention is, as I said before, is to identify the areas of the train, maybe the teams or the functions that may require additional help or focus for planning, or topics of concern. So for example, there may be issues around resourcing across the whole train, or there may be platform issues that you have or events that you have that may require additional planning to cover off those specific issues. Now, by the end of that, of the confidence vote, what you want to be clear on which areas need remediation, right, from a planning point of view, versus which areas are you quite satisfied and happy with. Because then what you can do is you can have targeted sessions after the confidence vote to fill in the gaps where they exist. And then you only need to have those individuals that are needed for those areas to actually close those gaps. So the next question is that how would you actually facilitate this in person? Well, actually, this is relatively straightforward and relatively easy exercise to perform in a large group. So what you would typically do is, as a release train engineer, you would get everybody's attention. And this would, again, as I said, once everybody's completed their planning towards the end of day 2, if you're doing a standard in-person PI planning event. Typically nowadays I'm seeing remote PI planning events stretching to 3 days, and that's quite typical as well. So maybe at the end of a 3-day remote PI planning event, And what you would do is the facilitator would actually ask for a confidence vote. So I typically start from the number 5. I'd say, okay, everybody that is extremely confident in the plan that they've put together, raise your hands. And then hopefully you'd have a bunch of people raising your hands for 5 and say, yeah, we're really confident. It went really awesome. It was great. So fantastic. Probably no need to further engage that audience. Okay, so that's great. Okay, great. Guys and gals, please put your hands down. Right, 4. Who still thinks it's a good plan, but you've got a few areas, a few issues, but nothing major, everything that's under control. And then you'd have some people hopefully putting up their hands over there as well. Okay. Again, I typically then say, okay, great, that's thanks. Does anyone want to raise any concerns at this point? Give them an opening. But typically people, when it's a 4, they say, oh, that's fine. We'll deal with any micro issue that still exists over there. Okay. Then we move on to 3. Right, and this is where things start to get interesting, because 3 typically occurs when you've got a significant, you may have some good elements to the plan, of course, but you also got other elements that are like a little bit, let's just say a little bit dodgy maybe, right? Okay. So at this point now you want to start to dig in from the audience. All those people that have put up their hands, you want to ask them one by one and you say, okay guys, what is missing? What is the challenge that you are actually facing, and try and start to log those and identify who they need to actually resolve, or what they would need to actually resolve those specific issues. So now you're going to remediation mode. Okay, you're trying to make sure that we can get a high confidence level of the people for the planning, so that at the end when you leave you've got a high you have a high degree of confidence in the plan that you come up with. So these individuals are going to be then putting together, okay, what is it we think we need? What are the areas of concerns? And they would log these, and you would go through each of those and you would identify who they would need. And then they might have breakout sessions to actually try and resolve those issues. The intent being to start to push those up higher up. And the same with 2 and the same with 1 as well. Now 1, if you've got 1, I've done so many PI plannings, but I've rarely come across a 1 before. And I think if I'm right, I might have come across 1 before in my entire career. And that was because basically they didn't quite understand the voting. It was their first time, so they were a little bit confused there. So by and large, if you've got 2s and 3s, you should try and identify what those issues are, and you should try and get those itemized on a whiteboard or whatever, and get the relevant teams on there to do some replanning to try and shore up those areas as well. Okay. So now the question is, how would you do confidence voting remotely? So now thankfully there are a lot of tools. I personally use a tool called Slido. So Slido is very simple and straightforward. It's really relatively quite easy for you to put together a confidence vote questionnaire, and you set up an account with them, which is free, and you can go in there and you can set up the confidence vote, and then you send a link to everybody, and then they can put a vote in real time. Obviously, it's not the same ambience, it's not the same fun as doing it in person, but it works fairly well and you get a good idea. And the principle of you trying to identify the areas of weakness for the planning and getting those and fixing those, they remain pretty much exactly the same. So you just do a repeat of what I just explained for the in-person event. Hope you find that useful. If you're looking to improve your PI planning, or you just want to learn some more about remote PI planning, you can find out a lot more about that in the video over here. Or if you are looking for just some general tips on your PI planning, you can click another video over here. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks very much. Bye.